we are going to be working with a chef who is based out of Los Angeles and is Costa Rican. And she actually just came out with a book called Mother Grains, I think a couple days ago, or maybe, yeah, just a couple days ago. And she owns a bakery in Los Angeles, and she's going to be teaching us a cake with buckwheat flour and buckwheat honey. If you got an ingredients kit, thanks Co-op for putting it together for us. And also, thanks Bennett Honey for the honey. We appreciate our partners so much. So Roxana, how are you doing? I don't know if I see you on the screen. Oh, I do see you. Welcome to Impastiamo, and how are you today?
Good. I'm ready. Everybody ready?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think we're
let's
ready.
cooking.
Yeah, so Roxana has a really tight schedule, so don't make her mad today because she's got to get it done. She didn't care. So get your ingredients ready and let's do it. Take it away.
All right. So, how's everyone? I am on a tight schedule. Today happens to be the second day since the release of Mother Grains, and you know, especially because this is a very confusing time to release books and anything else really. We plan a week long of activities here in Los Angeles, and today we have a big pizza party happening right after this class. So you know, this is a small break in my day to celebrate Earth Day and, you know, make something delicious. So the cake we're gonna make, and you guys have the recipe. We're gonna work. I'll alter the order of things a little bit, just to make sure that since you guys are baking along, so to make sure that it all happens within a lot of time. So there's the reason why I chose this recipe was because, hey, the nonprofit is benefiting the bees, and also because I think that buckwheat and honey and bees have a really, really awesome relationship. Buckwheat has produces an incredible amount of flowers that are pollinated by bees, and it's particularly a great collaboration because it yields this delicious honey that is a little bit darker than most, and it has a very assertive and pronounced flavor. Also, buckwheat, as some of you may not know, is used mostly as a cover crop in a lot of agricultural spaces. So you have like buckwheat planted to return nutrients to the soil, and in the meantime, being pollinated by bees that produce this delicious honey, and the cycle of life keeps on going. So that's a pretty cool romantic love story between bees and buckwheat, which I always think about when I make this cake or anything with buckwheat honey. This is the cake that we're gonna make. So we're gonna use buckwheat flour and buckwheat honey. We're also gonna use a little bit of all-purpose flour. This all-purpose flour can also be whole wheat flour, or a whole grain flour such as Sonora, which is a heirloom wheat. It can also be Red 5, or it can be Rouge de Bordeaux, those are varietals that are easy to find here in California. But if you are in the rest of the country, perhaps you would like to rely on something like Turkey Red, or even Ulan if you're in the East Coast. So all of this like funky, fun wheat varietals would do very well with the all-purpose flour. Without further ado, let's start cooking. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna work on any questions so far. I'm checking the chat constantly. So feel free.
Well.
Feel free to. What's that? Sorry.
If I see any messages, I'll read them along.
Okay,
well.
cool.
Yeah.
And then Sylvia can interject with questions or comments or suggestions. So just to make sure that we make it within the allotted time, I actually want to start with the almonds. So your oven should be at 325 at this point. And then this is a really cool little recipe that works really well with a lot of applications. Can you guys see me? Sylvia, I'm gonna have to like ask you if you see me on the screen, because on my screen you can't see the setup. Do you?
We can see great. Thank you.
Okay. And then at this point, we'll take a bowl. So I am going to use what we call a sill pad, or a heat resistant non-stick mat. And these guys are actually pretty affordable. They used to be very expensive, but in time they have become a lot cheaper. And they're really cool because that means that you don't have to use parchment paper, and they prevent a lot of things from sticking, which is cool. And then I'm gonna put just almonds. I'm a big fan of using almonds in their most basic form. So these are raw unblanched almonds, meaning that they're not toasted or dry roasted. I'm gonna use a little bit of honey. So I think it's about 2 tablespoons. And then we have salt and cinnamon that we're just gonna throw in there. And I'm gonna use the zest of 1 orange. If you're not a big fan of orange zest, you can use a little bit less. You don't have to use the whole orange. But I find that it's not quite as strong as one might think. And as it roasts in the oven, it actually mellows out. And I do like for this, to prepare this, I like this kind of nifty little zesters. There is a brand called Microplane. I don't usually endorse brands, but this is a really good one. So I recommend having a Microplane zester in your kitchen. Okay, so that's a good amount of zest. It's about a tablespoon maybe. I'm gonna give it a shaky so that I get as much of it as possible. And then I'm just gonna stir this up. So for some reason, I don't know why I don't see the gallery in my setup here on Zoom. So I trust that you guys are following. And if somebody's struggling or stalling, please do not hesitate to chat to us or tell Sylvia or raise your hand or scream out loud. So this is what it looks like, and it smells amazing.
Yum.
And then the one thing we have to be super careful at this point is that because we're gonna put these guys in the oven and allow them to roast. Remember, we have things that naturally toast in the oven, such as almonds, and then by the time we put honey on them, we're making them even more. Oh, somebody has the almonds ready. What an overachiever! So they're gonna want to caramelize pretty quick. So these kiddos. It's not a bad idea to spread them out on your sheet pan. Can everybody see? They're gonna look something like this. Ta-da. And then I bake in a professional, like an industrial bakery. So in my oven this morning, it was 9 minutes exactly at 325. In your home oven, it could take a little bit longer. And then how do you know they're ready? So that's a cool little lesson. Let's pretend that 8 to 9 minutes already happened. This is kind of what they look like. And then my tester is going to be, let's see, what I have. If we were to cut an almond in the center, I want to see a little bit of a bronze color. So that looks a little bit like peanut butter. You can also taste one. It will be like nice and toasty. If they're hot, obviously, maybe you want to wait a minute. Okay. So now we have the garnish for our dessert. And now we're going to make the cake batter, which seriously, what I like about this cake is I usually typically make it for Rosh Hashanah, which is a Jewish holiday in the early fall, because we do have like a really secular Jewish clientele around the bakery that enjoys a lot of our baked goods without having to be kosher. And I like this sense of renewal and a new year, even though it's in September. So it's kind of like a really great way to start the fall. in Rosh Hashanah, we'll have apples and honey because I guess you want the message is you want the new year to be sweeter. And I kind of like that. I think it's a very special way to look at the beginning of the fall and the winter holidays that are about to come. So that's something I learned from my Jewish friends. So this could not be easier. Like I kind of call this cake cheating cake because seriously, it's like so beyond stupid easy. I'm gonna tilt so you can see. All right. So here I have that all-purpose flour, or if you guys are using something more interesting, such as Sonora wheat flour, or red 5, or rouge de Bordeaux, or red turkey, or ulan, this is a very good opportunity to use it. And I'm gonna put it through the sifter along with buckwheat flour, which has this really interesting color, and that's because the hulls are dark. And I'm pushing it through the sifter. And along with this, I'm gonna add the leavening and the salt and the cinnamon. So leavening is what we call baking powder, baking soda, and in this case, baking soda. And because it does those things, it leavens. Okey-dokes. So it's very common when we're doing whole grain baking that you'll end up with a little bit of husky bits from the bran, from the grain. Never toss this away. Just go like this and throw it back in. Remember that we sift not to remove bran or parts of the wheat. We sift to add lightness to a recipe. Oh, in this case in particular. All right. So on a separate bowl, so these are our dry ingredients and they're all ready to rock and roll. And then on a separate bowl, which I'm gonna need to get a bowl. Hold on 1 second.
How are you doing at home? Following along? If you need a minute, let us know.
All right, so in this bowl, I think I can see it. I have, what do we have? Okay, we're gonna actually put the liquid ingredients. And I always like to put my sugar with the liquid ingredients because sugar was originally liquid. It was the juice from the sugar cane, and it likes to return to that state when mixed with liquidy things. So I find that pretty cool, bit of information. And it actually is a good tip for baking. So next time you are doing recipes that call for the two bowls, wets and dries, consider mixing the sugar with the wets. You'll get a better dissolve and a really nice crumb, because it is really nice and well dissolved, it will spring up and like be a little lighter. Okay, so here I have applesauce, which of course, if we were in the middle of Rosh Hashanah, which we are not, it would be really cool, you know? It would be very evocative of this holiday. And then I have a very good amount, very healthy amount of buckwheat honey, a very, very cool, sexy honey, super dark. If you were to compare it to regular honey, let me just bring some so you guys can see the difference.
Any questions so far?
So it would be, this is our normal clover honey. The oil is in, yes, ma'am. And here we have the buckwheat honey. It's almost like molasses looking, really funny. Funky little.
So much darker.
So much darker, and sometimes it also feels a little thicker. And it also has a really nice and pronounced taste. Buckwheat honey is often harvested in the wild, and it is kind of like a byproduct of agriculture in the sense that a lot of farmland will have buckwheat growing on the fields to restore the land. And then before you know, like if there's a few hives put somewhere within a few miles of the farmland, you end up with buckwheat honey without trying too hard. I'm gonna add 2 eggs. So all my liquids are here. And then I'm gonna go ahead and whisk. I'm gonna start from the center out where all that sugar is. And this is kind of like, it's gonna start out a little thick, but then it's gonna be very uniform and homogeneous. It smells really good. So it's pretty interesting how like this, the hint of apple would be just very subtle, and it's really all about the honey, but the apple gives us a tremendous amount of moisture and makes the cake really, really special. And then, so okay, so whenever we have this method that we have, where we have the 2 bowls of dried ingredients versus wets, we kind of like make a well in the center of the dries. And notice, this is why this recipe is so moist. We have a larger amount of liquids than we do. Somebody just asked, what's the best kind of applesauce? Unsweetened applesauce, if you're gonna purchase it, or just like applesauce with no additive, make it at home. So no sugar. There's a serious amount of sweetness in the recipe, just being the honey, and so I would say it's good if the applesauce has no sugar. So I'm gonna start from the center out, slowly at first, just drawing in those ingredients towards the center. It's not unlike a pancake batter. It feels kind of similar. And notice how it has darkened as we mix. That is a little bit from the cinnamon, but mostly from the buckwheat. And that's what it looks like. It's a very simple batter. I mean, seriously, like that is like the most satisfying kind of recipes. Recipes that where you have really great ingredients, they require very little manipulation and they yield really good, delicious results. So I'm gonna put it in, this is a 9-inch, 9-inch. I like a spring mold because it makes unmolding so easy. But you could use a 9-inch cake pan, normal stuff. You don't have to go buy fancy tools for this. But I do recommend it. I feel like it's nice. It prevents me having to unmold a cake, and I appreciate that. And then this guy gets placed all in here. And then we're gonna go in the oven. The oven at this point, we can lower it to 300, and it's gonna bake for quite a while. In your home kitchen, it could be up to an hour. Here in the restaurant, in my convection oven, it was about 15 minutes. So, however, you don't wanna go too dark. So maybe check it after 45, wait and see how it's looking. When it's ready, it's gonna look like this. It's gonna be pretty nice and crusty on the sides. It might crack a little bit. The dip is gonna happen later as it cools. But if you get a skewer inserted in the center, it should come out clean. All right. So once this guy comes out of the oven and while it's still a little warm, we're gonna brush with honey. If you, for any reason, let the cake cool down like I just did, you could also heat up the honey just a little bit. So that's what we're gonna do now. Any questions? Really great. Yes, if Michelle, if you have a convection oven, just make sure that the fan is on low. I feel like high fans tend to dry out cakes. Okay, so because my cake was a little bit on the cooler side, I just heated up my honey And this is the buckwheat honey. And you can do a little drizzle like this, or you can just use your brush and give it a nice even layer on top. This works too. Am I going too fast? Everybody's catching up?
How are you doing at home? Some people may not be cooking along, but Ursula, I know you're cooking, and Corey, how are you doing? Yeah? Okay, very good.
Okay, cool. I think I can also pull the chat. Okay. Yeah, we're good. We're all cut up on questions.
You got it. You're doing great.
I would say that not a bad idea. Once you see it, so it should be nice and shiny. I mean, the smells are, I'm dying here. So amazing and pronounced. It's a little spicy. Do you wait to cool the cake before unmolding? Is that the question? Before you no, I don't. So actually, no, what I was saying is that if you wait, if for any reason, like let's say like somebody knocked on the door and like your Amazon package just got home or whatever, and your cake cooled a little bit, it's not a problem to heat up the honey just a tiny little bit, like 10 seconds in the microwave, or just like on low while stirring for 30 seconds on a pan on the stove. And then that would make spreading the honey or brushing the cake with the honey really an easy task. And then should we put the cake in the oven? Yeah, if you have a cake that's mixed and in a pan, and if your oven is at 325, go ahead and put the cake in the middle rack of the oven. I don't want to show you my middle rack in the oven because it's in a different room, and it's a very scary oven actually. But yes, you can do that at home. So, and then you can do that if for any reason your cake cools, you just add a warmer honey. If your cake's still warm, just do room temperature honey, because it's gonna spread, like the warmth from the cake will spread. Oh, sorry. So Megan, you're right. Megan is trying to ask me what's the right temperature. Let's do 300 for an hour. Like, just to clarify, 300 for 50 minutes to an hour in the middle rack of the oven. It was the almonds that was at 325. So if you're done with the almonds come out. Cake goes in, we reduce the temperature to 300. Why do you guys think we're using such a lower temperature? For $5. All right. So the reason why we lower the temperature of the oven is because honey is a very high in sugar substance. So it wants to caramelize at a lower temperature. So it's advisable, since we have a hefty amount of cake batter, to reduce the temperature so that it doesn't get super dark on the top especially, but also on the sides. Which a little bit of crust is, I find it very decadent and delicious and desirable in a cake, but not if you're gonna bake it for an hour. All right, so we're doing good on time. So the next thing that I would want to do while we wait for this guy, I'm actually gonna sit here for a minute to let the people that are putting the cake in the oven put the cake in the oven. How's our day going? It's a little overcasty here in LA.
Does everybody have
what do you guys
in their oven? Yeah. Hi, Ash.
All right. Okay. So I would say the next step right now, very important, is like, let's make sure everyone has a timer. Let's set the timer for 45 minutes. That's a good time to wait and see how the cake is doing. It's very possible that that's still too early and that your cake is not done, but it will give you an opportunity to rotate the tray, which is always advisable to ensure that your cake bakes evenly. And then it will give you kind of like a guess of like where you're at. Okay, I have too much color, or I don't have any color, or I'm doing great, which is possibly what's going to happen, because this cake is really, really foolproof. And after 45 minutes, it's very possible that you're going to add 5 to 10 minutes. And always the greatest indicator is to insert a skewer in the middle of the cake. And if it comes out clean or just a teeny bit moist, it's okay. All right. So I think we should make the whipped cream, and then we'll discuss how to plate. So for whipped cream could not be any easier. So this cake is very delicious with anything. I find it delicious with additional to be plated at room temperature or slightly warm with a little bit of applesauce is great. With a little bit of like vanilla ice cream, very simply, plain with just a cup of tea or coffee. But if we were gonna go celebratory, since it's Earth Day and all, we can make a festive and delicious whipped cream. And I want to add a teeny bit of a cheat that I always do when I do whipped cream. So this is heavy cream. And I believe, Sylvia, people got a heavy cream, right? In their kits?
So people ended up purchasing their own.
Okay, good.
Even
so
to answer the
So
even
we should
to
just
answer
have
the flour was donated to us. So also in terms of sustainability, we didn't want to throw it away just because it wasn't good enough. But I think that people, got their whipping cream. Yeah.
Okay, so this should be heavy whipping cream, about a cup. I also like to throw a little lump, which you can see it here, of sour cream, or it can also be creme fraiche. And the reason why I do this is because it actually adds a little sourness to the whipped cream. Not crazy, just a teeny bit, and it balances out the sweetness in desserts, or like even in the honey that we're gonna use to sweeten our cream. So here, I'm gonna wait for this little bear dude to come down, and I'm gonna add about 2 to 3 tablespoons of honey. And that's just to sweeten it. So I'm not gonna do any powdered sugar or any other additional sugar, just a little bit of honey. And I'm gonna do it right from the beginning because of the viscosity of the honey. Is a good idea to start to get this stuff early on. So, and then you can have fun with little twirlies on the cream. I think that an important message for me to share with you guys on Earth Day is, after researching this book and working on it for 3 years, I had a really great experience. And I kind of I'm really hopeful today about where we're at as a community of bakers, millers, and growers. And I feel like we are kind of like developing a really good symbiosis in which we depend on each other and we help one another fulfill our sustainability goals. And purchasing small batch flours milled from heritage varietals by independent or small operators it makes a real difference. Just to give you an idea, commodity flour is like 10 cents to a pound, while we pay $2 to $3 for properly grown and milled flour. So by supporting the smaller companies, we're definitely sending a message to the industry at large that we want to see a different kind of flour that is better for us and better for the environment. And here we have, I'm going to start whisking, which is actually really fun. And I'm going to just whisk until I have a little bit of thickness. I don't like my whipped cream to be super thick. I just would like to be a little soft. And there's only one way to achieve this, and this is just keep whisking. You could also do it on a mixer. That's totally fine.
Can we use Greek yogurt? Someone asks.
You can definitely use Greek yogurt, just don't whip it. But you can certainly use Greek yogurt. You can also add a teeny bit of Greek yogurt to your whipped cream, Just don't go crazy because like the sourness and the Greek yogurt can actually curdle the cream.
And then where was the buckwheat flour from? That was from Co-op.
So my buckwheat flour comes from an independent mill in South Carolina. It's called Anson Mills, ANSON Mills. And they grow two kinds of wheat, or like they mill two kinds of buckwheat that are very special. And they're two Japanese varieties. And it's super delicious. It's a little bit pricey, but it's really, really tasty. You could also purchase buckwheat from Central Milling. And Central Milling has a really good online store. I think it's centralmilling.com. So it's a little bit of a larger company, not quite as niche and boutique as Anson Mills, but they will have it, and that's cool. So notice how we have a really nice ivory color. That's kind of what that's the honey talking to us. I'm gonna unplug this fridge because it's very loud. Okay, and then see, you just want soft peaks, nothing super thick. All right, so it sounds like we have everything to make a delicious plated dessert. So I'm gonna go grab a plate and a knife so we can plate a slice of this cake. In the meantime, you guys can whip away, those of you who are whipping your cream. I'll be right back.
Anybody wants to show us what they're working on? Ursula, how's your cake, or how's your whipped cream coming along? Slowly?
I'm not there yet.
Okay. Take your
I've just
time.
done the almonds, and then I'm kind of trying to take notes, and
Yeah, that's smart.
you know,
That is
I had to refill my salt. I'm not prepared, I guess.
No, you're prepared. That's okay. We're going at a good pace. So
Yeah.
it's good to take notes, and we'll also send you a recording within the next couple of days.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Someone ran out of vegetable oil, and she's asking if it's okay to mix it with olive oil. We'll ask chefs.
Right. Everybody ready for a little cake time? Okay.
Chef, we had a question.
Yes.
Someone
please.
ran out of vegetable oil, and she's asking if it's okay to mix it with olive oil.
Yes, it is. Hopefully your olive oil is not too expensive. And hopefully it's not too stinky. You know how they are sometimes a little strong in flavor. But yeah, you can certainly do that. I'm not baking along, but I want to. Let's see, what's the question?
But I want to say I'm really enjoying this class.
Cool.
It's all super clear and easy to follow. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
We appreciate that.
Thank you. You know, I'm telling you, it's not me. It's this cake. This cake is so easy. So easy. All right.
No, it's you, Chef. Come on.
So the reason why I really like these spring molds is like in case you're klutzy like I am. They prevent a lot of accidents. So I'm gonna use an offset spatula. Let's get rid of all this junk. And then always advisable, even when it looks like the cake has pull from the sides. Oh, sorry. It's a good idea to run an offset spatula or a paring knife just to make sure that your cake is not stuck in there. And God forbid, when you pull this sides of the pan, like you end up with a lump of cake coming undone. So, oh, hi. And then here we go.
Nice.
So this is what I like about this cake. These are really, really, I mean, it's so decadent. It almost looks like chocolate. But I have is a very, very tender cake. You can see as I'm touching it. Yet I have a really nice little crusty, crunchy layer from that honey acquiring color in the oven without burning, which is where the 300 becomes important. So I'm gonna cut ourselves. Oh, actually, before I do this, I'm gonna take a few of the almonds. So everybody likes to eat almonds, but I feel like if we put the whole almonds, somebody might choke. And we don't want any of that at our dinner party. Not that any of us should be having dinner parties right now. But any of you guys getting vaccinated? I'm very happy. I'm very happy to say that our entire staff, with the exception of 2 people, have gotten their 2 vaccines. And it really has given us an incredible, tremendous sense of safety, and hope that things are getting better. So I really recommend getting vaccinated if you have access to it, or as soon as you have access to it. So I'm gonna cut a good chunky. I just sort of rough chop my almonds. That's it. That looks good to me. And then I'm gonna cut myself a little slice. And then I recommend at this point, we're going to grab ourselves a generous dollop of whipped cream. Can you guys see? Am I on in there?
So well,
okay.
we can see so well.
And then I'm gonna pull, okay, let's see, are you gonna pull all in one piece? I'm gonna pull a slice of cake. So this is how moist this cake is. Like there's not any dryness in there. And like that's one thing that baking with whole grains will do. It actually makes things very tender. All that bran hydrates and makes things very tender. Assuming that we're giving it a recipe enough liquids. And in this case, we have the opportunity to use oil, applesauce, what else did we put in there? Oil, applesauce, and a little bit of honey, and all of these things contribute to the moisture. And isn't this like a really sexy color? I find it really, really crazy when things that are not chocolate look this decadent. Yum, yum. Any questions up to this point? Should I hang out and see you guys just pull out your cakes? Let's actually taste it on camera. Let me bring a knife and a fork.
Can we see how you plated it again? It looks so pretty. Doesn't it? With the almonds and, right? Yeah, it looks stunning. Seriously. Chef, could we see how you plated it again? Because we love how you did that.
So I did a little dollop of the cream with just a slice of cake. Oh my God, this cake is so, so delicious. And then you can do a sprinkle of the almonds. So, with all these elements, you have a little bit of crunch, a little bit of cream. Even though there's honey in the whipped cream, it's not overpowering. And it kind of like just makes the whole thing come together. I wanted to tell you guys about a variation I like to make of this cake. So it's inspired a little bit by pain d'épices, which is a French cake slash bready kind of thing, or like a quick bread, you could call it, typical of the holidays in France. And I think it's from the north, and where rye flour is very prominent. And I like to reinvent this cake with that idea in mind. And I substitute the buckwheat flour and use rye flour. And if I find myself using rye in all the places where I use buckwheat. And I think it is because I think of this grains, that's like darker grains, that taste really good with things that are similar to their color. So the buckwheat honey, dark, just like rye or buckwheat, or chocolate, just like rye or buckwheat, or dark berries like huckleberries, or even cassis or black currants. This variation is also here in the cookbook. And I'm gonna give you exact amounts. So when I do the rye honey cake variation, I use 1 cup of dark rye flour, which is 125 grams instead of the buckwheat flour. And then in addition to the cinnamon, you would use half a teaspoon of ground cloves, half a teaspoon of ground cardamom, half a teaspoon of freshly grated nutmeg, and half a teaspoon of ginger. And I'm so glad that I got to tell you guys about this variation, because I hope that people that start to bake or that are becoming very proficient at baking with whole grains are constantly changing one flour or one grain for the other, because that really enriches your whole grain experience. And it's kind of like one of the cool things about this style of baking, that we can do that. We can swap ingredients to make the most out of the seasons or what we have on hand. I insist that if you buy a bag of buckwheat like that, you should finish it. Like, let's just not let it sit on the cupboard, and give you as many ideas so you can finish the bag.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Right. We're talking about sustainability, right? So
yeah.
So can I give you guys another tip for buckwheat since we have time?
Yes, please.
Okay, cool. So the coolest thing that I did in the book was I wanted to do an experiment, which was to bake chocolate chip cookies with as many grains as I could.
Wow, look at that.
I did 8 versions of it, and I really, really like the version with buckwheat. I'll give you exact amounts. So you could try this at home. You don't even have to use my recipe. But what I did is I divided the flour. So think of your favorite chocolate chip cookie. Think of the amount of flour. Where can you buy the wonderful book? I'm going to tell you as soon as I give you this recipe. Thank you, Corey. So think of your favorite chocolate chip cookie recipe. Look at the flour amount. Divide that in 2. Half of that half will be your regular all-purpose flour, and the other half will be buckwheat flour. That's all you have to do. And you're going to end up with a really, really cool and sexy and different chocolate chip cookie that will taste completely different and yet be familiar, and really helps you appreciate that amazing pairing that is buckwheat and chocolate. So mother grains can be purchased, obviously, on all the online sources. I, in the spirit of Earth Day and supporting smaller mom and pop shops, I suggest you patron your local bookstore. You could also buy from the bakery where I work. That is friendsandfamilyla.com. You can also purchase from the publisher, which is Norton, and that's www.norton.com, or wherever books are sold.
By the way, that cover is just beautiful.
Isn't it a great book?
It's
Yeah,
really
like, like I can say it because I had nothing to do with it. But I'm so proud of this book because it was a majority female team. From the editor to design. And I also work with a majority female team here at the bakery. So all the recipes were tested by women. And then it's called Mother Grains. And it really, really, showed me, not that I didn't know, that the power of women working together is a very, very, very strong force.
Yeah.
Like all the things that we accomplished.
Yeah, that's why we appreciate you being on this class so much. Women empowerment, and we appreciate you supporting us, and we trying to support you. I think there's a special power behind that for sure.
It always happens. It always happens. Women work together and wonderful things happen. That's who we are. Okay, I feel like we have 10 minutes. If you guys want to share any questions or thoughts, ask away about buckwheat or the cake or anything else. I can also be more specific about the things that like each ingredient does to the recipe. Like we all notice that I really like cakes that are also made with oil as opposed to butter, because they tend to have this sort of like soft crumbs. they don't necessarily have like the density of a pound cake, which is delicious, but they have a soft crumb that is really almost silky. And whole grains, because they have all that bran, really benefit from fat in a recipe. And I think that this is a really good example of how good oil can be in recipes like this.
Yeah. You said that the book took you 3 years to write. Did you
3
change
years.
a lot? Do you feel
You
like
know,
you grew with it?
I think if anything, I had to pull out a lot of things. A lot of recipes didn't make it in the book. I had to like narrow it down. I was a little, yeah, I was trying to buy too much maybe, but the most important moment was probably when I realized that I could focus on 8 grains in particular rather than like everything on the shelf at the local Whole Foods. And what all of these grains told me was that grains are that these grains have a very special place in our society. Like they have contributed to our local economies, to our cultural development, to our politics, to the way our cities grew. Just think of like the history of wheat in the Midwest, right? It built the Midwest. It really is like the land of wheat. I want to answer some questions that I see here on the chat.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I can read
We
it to
said-
you if it's easier.
Sure.
Someone says, if I can't find buckwheat honey for any reason, could you swap it for normal honey, or would that be super different?
No, it would not be super different. It would just be more mellow. So that's also like something to keep in mind if you have like finicky kids at home. You might want to use a milder honey, like clover honey. A honey that I find very, very user-friendly and that is very abundant here in California is orange blossom honey. And it has a really, really almost like a hint of orange in it. I find that one really, really food-friendly, and kids like it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, if there are no more questions, oh, there is. Could we replace regular flour with another gluten-free flour like buckwheat?
You know, I'm not very well versed with gluten-free flours. I have baked with gluten-free flours. I feel like the one thing about gluten-free flours is that you have to make items that don't require a lot of height. And this is a very high cake. So I would maybe recommend it to bake it more like a little bit shallower, like maybe divide it into 2 smaller pans, like 2 8-inch pans. And that way, my dimmer. And that way you can have like 2 smaller, and they're gonna bake a lot faster. And that way you don't need a lot of like structural flour to hold the height of your cake. A blend I like to use, and I like to share this if you're into gluten-free baking, is I'm not a big fan of all those like concoctions that people sell out there as gluten-free flours. They're usually made with ingredients that are just not as good as you would want to put in your body, and a lot of additives and gums. I would say just buy really, really good organic oat flour, buckwheat flour, and brown rice flour, and combine them in equal parts. So you would do a third of buckwheat, a third of oat, and a third of rice, brown rice. This is to date my favorite gluten-free flour. And do keep in mind that these flours do not have any gluten, so therefore they can hold big structural pastries. And if you are proficient at whole grain bake, gluten-free baking, you probably know how to utilize gums, so you might want to use that. It's also, I feel like in this case, in this recipe, the applesauce helps, the eggs help to hold structure. Yeah, I'm happy when I use that flour combo. But it's not like a flour combo that you could make bread with, for example.
Got it.
Any more questions? Oh, okay. One thing before we go, because I know we're about to come to an end. So if you have any questions about this class or about the book, you can find me on Instagram at Roxana with one N, Jullapat, Jullapat. I'm pretty good about responding to DMs as long as they're about cooking. And it might take me a couple of days, but I always get back.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Thank you. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your time, especially during this time. And you're so busy with the book. We wish you all of the best. And
Thank
please
you.
buy the book, everybody, Mother Grains, and support Roxana. She does a wonderful work. And we hope to see you during an Impastiamo class again. And we hope that you come back and we see you. Thank you for returning all the time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Get some rest. Get some rest, Sylvia.
Yeah, you too. Bye.